While tarot is an important part of my day, my mornings with my cards is a mindful and meditative practice that provides an anchor for my day, an energy to tap into, and guidance to carry me throughout the week. Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and today we'll be exploring my personal tarot practice and how I start my mornings with my cards. So today I thought we would chat a little bit about my personal tarot practice. So this is something that I get asked about quite frequently. How do I actually go about using the cards every day? How do I use so many decks every day? And so I thought that since this was a question that I got quite frequently, that I would just take a moment and really sit down and share with you and show you how I actually go about the process of my tarot practice throughout a day. Now, because this is quite a lengthy little process, I've actually broken this down into two different videos. So the first video we'll be talking about how I start my mornings with the tarot. So the cards that I use in the morning, the draws that I do, the sort of morning part of my tarot practice. And in the second video, we will talk about how I use the cards throughout the day to support my day, and how I use cards kind of beyond just your general readings, because I do use my cards for various other things other than just doing daily draws or actual readings with spreads and things of that nature for guidance. While I do that throughout a day as well, that's not something I actually do every day, but I do use my cards every day in certain ways. And so we'll be discussing that a little bit more in the second video. So to start off with, I want to just talk a little bit about how I start my mornings off with my tarot cards. And I say tarot cards, but I'm going to use that as a broad term because I also use Oracle, and I kind of intermingle them, and which decks I use and what I use them for kind of depend on what I'm doing. So to get us started, I'm actually going to flip the camera around so we can take a look at some of the decks that I do use in my practice and how I go about using them every morning. So my morning begins with a cup of coffee and a deck of cards. So I like to think of my morning readings as a mashup of the Morning Pages method and the Miracle Morning method with a standard tarot reading. So the Morning Pages method comes from Julia Cameron's book, The Artist Way. In this book, she asks writers to get up a little bit early to go ahead and free write for a couple pages to start their day. Now, the Miracle Morning method comes from Hal Elrod's productivity book of the same name, which teaches a habit stacking process. So that consists of 6 habits: silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing, which is writing or journaling. So I have taken those few methods and kind of combined them into a morning reading ritual. And the reason I call it a ritual is because this is really a process that I have imbued with a lot of personal meaning for me. And it also is a practice that I do very intentionally. So usually to begin my morning reading, I would generally spread out a reading cloth. Which one I use really depends on the season, because like most things in my life, my reading practice is very seasonal. Now, generally I would spread this cloth out fully, and I would usually include maybe a candle and perhaps some crystals to kind of help me set my sacred space. That kind of helps me shift from the mindset of, everything that I need to do and my running to-do list in my head, and I got to run here and I got to do this and I got to do that. Setting all of this out, taking the time to really just set my space up to kind of create this sacred bubble, helps me to kind of shift my mindset away from the mundane things and kind of shift into more of this magical process that I like to do. So then I would get my cards that I would be using, and today we'll be using the Dreaming Way Tarot. And I like to just pick up my cards and just sit with them for a minute. And during this time, I really like to just take a minute to feel the cards, to take a few deep grounding breaths, to give myself a moment to really kind of calm and center and connect with what I'm going to be doing. It kind of shifts me from that crazy brain into that sort of calm and mindful state so that I can really focus on what I'm doing in the moment. This is also a wonderful time to, say a short prayer or to maybe thank the cards or deity or spirit or whatever you feel helps you, guide you in your readings. This is a wonderful moment to just take a breath and say a quick thank you, or maybe a little prayer to the deity of your choice, just to kind of, again, honor that part of your practice and to infuse it with that meaningful connection that you make to your cards and to your practice. So the next thing that I would do would be to intentionally shuffle. And when I shuffle my cards for my first reading, basically what I'm doing is I am, should have picked a deck that shuffled better, but I am infusing the cards with my intention. Now, whether you believe that that's like an actual thing that happens, like you literally infuse the cards with your intention, or if it's you feel that it's just more of a metaphorical thing, either way, it's still the idea of bringing your intention to mind and really taking a moment to sink into that. But the idea behind the intentional shuffle is really just to give you a time and space to really set your intention for the reading. And of course, we need to shuffle the cards to mix them up so that we get, a good reading as well. But really what we're trying to do is also set the intention for the reading as a whole. So I will think about the reading that I'm going to do. As my morning draws aren't really in answer to a question, they are more to set the stage or to provide an energy or a guide for the day or for the week, depending on the reading. I really don't think of what question I might like to receive or anything like that. I just think about what message I might need, what guidance might I require this week, what might be helpful to support me throughout my day, what might be helpful to support me in my personal growth. And this really does depend on how you approach tarot as a whole and how you read the cards. So if you read tarot more for personal growth and self-reflection, that will obviously be more of your intention when you're setting out your morning readings. If you read tarot more predictively, as in what am I going to come across today, then that would be reflected in your intention setting as well. It's really important to think about what your intention is for your readings and how that actually relates to your tarot practice as a whole and how you read tarot, because how you read tarot influences the kind of readings that you like to do, especially when we're talking about reading for ourselves versus reading others. And obviously this whole short series is all about reading tarot for yourself and cultivating a personal tarot practice. So after I have spent some time in intentional shuffling, then I will lay out my cards for my reading. And when I lay out my cards, I do like to think about the intention that I set. And as I lay them, you'll see most of the time I lay them very organically. There are actually only a few readings, morning readings that I do that I use predetermined spreads with, and I'll show you one here in just a minute. But as I'm laying out my cards, I'm really thinking about the intention behind my reading. If I am using a spread with predetermined cards, before I lay each card, I think about each position. If this was one of my energetic readings of what to embrace, what to release, and what to focus on, then I would think about, before I draw this particular card, before I draw my first card, I would think about, what do I need to embrace? And then I would draw the card. What do I need to focus on? Draw the card. What do I need to release? Draw the card. And again, this is all about really laying cards and creating readings with intention. So it's being very mindful and very intentional with how you go about your readings. Then, of course, after I've laid my cards, I would then do my actual reading and I would interpret my cards, look for that guidance in the message. Again, that relates back to depending on what spread I'm using, whether I'm reading with a spread at all or whether I am just reading more organically and intuitively. And then finally, I record my readings. Now, I do want to note that my readings do not end up picture perfect in my journal the first time out. I will show you here what I had. This is a printout of cards that I've drew for this week, and then here's my readings. And these are all, like, as you can see, it's written on scratch paper. It's actually written on the back of a book that I'm writing. So when I'm writing books, I print out for editing and I use the back of them for scratch paper for my readings. So that eventually gets put into my tarot journal, where we see I have the printouts and I do some scrapbooking and things of that nature to just really kind of add that creative level to my tarot journals. It also offers me an opportunity to go back and look at my readings, because a lot of what starts out in this free write, I will condense a lot of this down into a message that makes a little bit more sense, because a lot of times my free writing and my initial interpretation doesn't really make a lot of sense, because it's just my brain kind of running with what I see here. And so by going back and adding my readings in later, I have the ability to, make them pretty and do all of that kind of creative stuff that I like to do with them. But it also gives me a little bit of space and perspective from my original reading, so I can come back and look at it from a new perspective and perhaps find some deeper insights or expand on my reflections. So now let's take a look at some of the readings that I do in the morning. This is by no means an exhaustive list, and I do have a guide coming out soon that will actually share with you several more of the readings that I do through in the morning as well as throughout the day. So one of the ways that I definitely spent most of last year connecting with my cards was actually in what I call my daily draw, and that is really a 2-card reading, because it uses one tarot and it uses one oracle. So let's pull the Magical Herb Oracle here. And in this reading, we pull one tarot for the energy of the day and one oracle for the message of the day. So here we have the 4 of Swords is the energy, and the message would be balance. How perfect are those two? So you've probably seen me, if you've seen a lot of my monthly reflections videos in 2019, this was most of what my tarot practice was throughout 2019. Here we have the Chariot with enthusiasm. This is such a fun process to do in general, just to see how cards pair together and just to get really great intuitive quick messages. So here we have the 5 of Swords in activation. So while this was the primary staple of my practice in 2019, I have changed things up a little bit in 2020, because I believe that my tarot practice should always be growing and changing. I always want to be learning. I always want to be trying new things. And so while I still do this daily draw where I pull one tarot, one oracle, I still like to turn to this reading as it is kind of a staple. It always gives me a great message. I know what energy I need to tap into, and I have a message for how I can apply that energy. However, throughout 2020, my goal has been to really expand on my reading practice as a whole. So I've been focusing on more expansive readings. So I'm going to share with you a couple of those that I do, and like I said, I will have more of them available for you in that guide. So one of my favorite really simple 3-card readings to do is my energetic reading, and that is like a check-in for the day, and it provides an anchor and a support that I turn to throughout the day. So for this particular reading, it's again it's a reading with a tarot deck and an oracle deck. I pull one oracle card for what to focus on. So here we have purification. And then I pull 2 tarot cards, one for what to embrace and one for what to release. So this energetic reading gives me something to focus on. It gives me an energy to tap into. It shows me what I need to embrace to tap into that energy and what I need to release to support that energy. And this is one of my favorite 3-card readings because it's not situation dependent. I can turn to this 3-card reading at any time throughout a day. It doesn't have to be in the morning, but that is the time that I tend to do the most work with my cards. So here we have the focus is change, what to embrace is the Queen of Pentacles, and what to release is the 8 of Swords. Here we have cleanse with embracing the Page of Pentacles and releasing justice. So this is a wonderful reading that I kind of have developed in place of that daily draw that I showed you just a minute ago, where we have one tarot, one oracle. This is really just an expansion of it, but it's really focused on energy and how energy is moving throughout the day and how I can tap into the energy that I need to support me throughout the day. So that is definitely one of my favorite 3-card readings. So another reading that I've really been enjoying so far this year is what I call my waterfall readings. And this is a reading that is set up to basically be one reading that builds upon itself throughout the week. So at the beginning of the week, I start with a 3-card reading to give me my message for the start of my week. And I will record this message in my journal and I will sit with it, and that will be the message that I take with me. So generally I do this on a Monday. Tuesday is usually a day of reflection for me. So I will come back to this reading that I did the day before, and I'll look back at the cards, I'll look back at what I wrote, and that gives me the opportunity to further expand on those insights and to add more reflections, to maybe look at things from, again, a little bit more of a distance perspective, because now I've had some time to sit with this message. Has anything new come about? Has anything been expanded upon, or have any realizations come to mind? Sometimes I write that in my journal and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just sit with the cards and reflect back on the message. Then I do a midweek 3-card draw, and I pull 3 more cards to support my original message. So this is checking in to see how things are going this week. It's also a wonderful time to look at, what do I still need to do? What still needs to be addressed? What do I still need to bring to mind? Or maybe what do I still need to release? And so this now becomes a 6-card reading. So while I read this line on its own, in terms of that particular day, I always refer back to my original reading. Because now, instead of just a 3-card reading, I have a 6-card reading. And I'm sure you can see where this is going. Thursday for me would be another reflection day. And this is a time where I take a look at the full 6-card reading that I've done. And I note any other reflections or impressions that have come to mind, or that I think of as I'm looking back at this reading. And then on Friday, I do a final 3-card pull, which is kind of the wrap up for the reading, or wrap up for the week. And this again becomes now a 9-card pull. So while I do take this 3-card line in a reading as its own, I also refer back to the other readings that came before it, and then I coalesce them into a single message using the 9-card reading. And so in this way, you can see that one line of cards builds upon the one that came before it. So it is essentially one reading, because it's essentially at the end of the week, I've done a 9-card reading. I've not replaced any of the cards along the way, I just add to them. And so it creates this waterfall effect where over time, we start with the 3-card reading, move on to add to it to become a 6-card, and then again, wrap it all up with the 9 cards. And so that allows me to do kind of bigger readings, but to also take them in pieces and parts, and to really be mindful and aware of the messages that I'm receiving. And those days in between that I noted, that Tuesday and Thursday for me, really allows me to have that time to reflect on the cards that I've drawn, because I like to read tarot, I like to pull cards, and I like to work with a lot of decks. So sometimes I kind of rush through my readings so that I can just get on to the next reading, right? I can get on to working with the next deck. And this kind of a reading really forces me to focus in on the actual reading that I've received, and not just cycling through them so fast that I don't ever have time to digest them. Now, I do the waterfall reading throughout the course of a week. However, you could extend this reading to be as many days as you wanted to. This could be a reading over 3 weeks. You could add more lines to it and make one big reading over the course of an entire month. That would work just as well too. But the idea behind the waterfall reading is really to build upon the cards that came before it, and to create a reading that evolves slowly and a little bit more organically, and to create that space so that you can really dive deep into the messages that you're receiving. So my morning with my cards are a really mindful and meditative practice. They kind of provide the anchor for my day. And while I don't necessarily use them in a predictive way, as in telling me what's going to happen throughout a day, what I use them for is to help me to ground in the mornings, to help me to tap into the energy that I might encounter throughout that day, or maybe the energy that I myself need to embody throughout the day. And then, of course, to allow that message, whatever message of energy or guidance that I receive in my morning draws, can help guide me throughout the day. It's not really, like I said, it's not a predictive reading, although I'm not like knocking predictive readings at all, because I do predictive readings. I just don't do them in the morning. And I tend to do those when I'm actually looking at a particular situation or maybe a particular question that I have. It's not so much a generalized reading. And that's kind of what my morning draws are. They're more of a generalized energy reading, right? Like a focus for the day, a message for the day. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's how my day is going to turn out. You know, if I get the Tower card, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to have a Tower day. It just is reminding me to keep that Tower message in my mind as I go about my day. Like when things do come up, when things shift and change, you know, that gives me the opportunity to really think about those situations and look at them in a more mindful way, and to really keep that energy and those messages and the things that I learn in mind. And because for me, tarot is very much about personal growth. So it's very deeply tied into my personal growth practice. It's also pretty tied into my spiritual practice, which maybe we'll talk about in another video. In general, I don't use tarot as of, you know, what do I need to know for today? While I may phrase a question that way, that's not really what I mean. Really what I mean is, how can I grow today? How can I be a better me? What lessons do I need to learn? It's not about what needs to happen really externally, or what even needs to happen like in my daily life. Like, do I need to go clean the bathrooms? You know, do I need to go do the dishes? It's not about that kind of stuff. It's about, what do I need to do in here to grow today? What do I need to keep in mind to be the best me today? And that's how my morning readings really are. And I really want to stress the whole morning reading thing, because I do have other readings that I do where I am looking at, what do I need to do today? Like realistically, what do I need to get accomplished? What do I need to keep in mind in order to accomplish those things? Or I'm having an issue. What do I need to know to address that issue? And that's something that we'll talk about in the next video. But for my morning cards, it's really about setting up a stage for my day. It's getting me into the right mindset. It's getting me into the space where, keeping in mind that no matter what I actually do throughout a day, no matter what comes up, no matter challenges or, you know, struggles or successes or anything that I have throughout a day, what my morning reading kind of reminds me is that every day I am trying to learn and grow as a person. And that is really where those morning readings come in. It's really about taking a look at, what can I do to be a better person today? What can I do to help my own personal growth today? And to some extent, you know, that could also apply to, you know, what can I do to help my family grow today? And sometimes it's all intermingled, right? But it's more about what's happening within me. And I guess you could call that, it's really self-centric readings, right? It really is. It's all about me, 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 me. But it's all about me in the sense of, how can I be a better person today? How can I grow today? How can I be a more enlightened individual? You know, how can I be a better steward of the earth? How can I be a better friend? How can I be a better mother? All of those things get interwoven into these morning readings. And because I use them as a springboard for my personal growth, that's really where I'm coming from when I approach these morning readings. So the predictive stuff, the guidance readings, that all comes later on in the day. I just, for my personal practice, I can't dive into that heavy stuff in the morning. I have too much on my brain. There is like a to-do list a mile long, and I have, you know, 100 things that I need to do and things that I need to contend with and deal with. And I just can't really dive into that. You know, I just can't really dive into unpacking specific issues or situations or things like that at the beginning of the day. My brain just doesn't have room for it. I need to unload some of the stuff that needs to happen throughout a day before I can really shift into that mindset of diving deep into other things. And so those are readings that happen later on in the day for me. But if you're the type of person that, it's helpful for you to get that done first thing in the morning, I totally encourage you to do that. And that is the big thing about starting your own personal practice, is that you need to find what works for you. It's taken me a lot of years to develop my personal practice to this extent. It's been a lot of growth and change. And as my family grows and changes, my practice grows and changes. All the different aspects of my life go on to influence all of that. So it's really important that you remember to make your practice work for you and to work within the constraints of your life. So my practice works for me because I've really done a lot of the work to get to this point of figuring out what works for me and how to make it work into my life. So like for me, the morning readings are all about, my personal growth. My personal growth practice happens in the morning, and it kind of sets my tone for the day. And then I can kind of, in a sense, set it aside and go on without, the sort of mundane aspect of just everyday living, of, work and kids and all of that kind of stuff. And, but then I come back to my cards later on throughout the day, actually, for various other things, which again, we'll talk about in another video. But when it comes to setting up your own personal tarot practice, I just really encourage you to, watch what other people have to say, watch other videos like this, read books, things of that nature. Like, all that's great. Get inspiration, but make sure you do your own thing, because your tarot practice doesn't need to look like anybody else's. It doesn't need to look like mine. You're not living my life, right? So it should be a reflection of you and your life, and how you start your morning with the tarot. If you even choose to start your morning with the tarot, maybe you want to end your day with the tarot. That's totally fine too. But the whole point is to make sure that you're really integrating tarot into your day as it makes sense for your life, right? When you have the time and the mental energy and the emotional energy to do that, at the end of the day, it has to work for you. So make sure that you're creating your tarot practice in a way that is in alignment with who you are and actually fits into, your actual day, your mundane life. Tarot's magical, and that's great, but tarot's only magical and works if we fit it into the mundane. So if we can actually use it in, the practical, real world sense. And so I think that's really important to keep in mind. So I would love to know, do you start your day with tarot? When do you do your readings? And what kind of readings do you do if you do them in the morning? I would love to hear about them, so feel free to share with me in the comments below. Or if you'd like to make a video, that would be fantastic too. I would love to see some videos on, what does your tarot practice look like? I really enjoy looking at the way other people do things, being inspired by other people. And I think that that's a really great conversation to be had. So I would love to see some other videos and some comments. That would be fantastic. I hope you enjoyed this video and will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.